My best friend and my wife. The betrayal that broke me. You know how some friendships just feel right from the start? Like you've known each other forever, even if you just met? That's how it was with Mark. We met in college, practically inseparable from day one. We shared everything, late-night study sessions fueled by questionable coffee, epic road trips that almost ended in disaster, heart-to-heart talks about our deepest fears and wildest dreams. He was more than a friend. He was family. My brother from another mother, you know? The kind of guy who'd drop everything if you called, no questions asked. We had this unspoken understanding, this bond that felt absolutely, utterly unbreakable. We even had this ridiculous secret handshake we'd do, and it always made us crack up, no matter how serious things were. He was the constant, the anchor in my chaotic young adult life. Then, Sarah came into my life. And man, she hit me like a ton of bricks. It was at this local art fair of all places. I was just browse, completely oblivious, and then I saw her. She was standing there, mesmerized by this abstract painting and the way the light caught her hair. It was like a movie. We started talking, and it was just easy, effortless. She was witty, intelligent, had this infectious laugh that could brighten even the gloomiest day. We talked for hours that first day, just about everything and nothing. I was utterly captivated. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the one. And within a few months, it was a whirlwind romance. We were practically living in each other's pockets, exploring the city, trying new restaurants, staying up all night, just talking. Everything felt vibrant, exciting, full of possibility. She brought this incredible energy into my world, like all the colors suddenly got brighter. It wasn't long before Mark met Sarah, of course. I was a little nervous, you know? Like, what if they didn't get along? These are the two most important people in my life, and their approval meant everything. But I shouldn't have worried. From the first moment, they just clicked. It was amazing to watch. They found common ground in their shared love for obscure indie films and terrible dad jokes. They'd banter back and forth, challenging each other, making each other laugh. It was like they'd known each other for years, not just minutes. They'd even gang up on me sometimes, which, honestly, I secretly loved. It was like my two favorite worlds had finally collided and formed this perfect, harmonious universe. My best friend and the woman I was falling deeply in love with, all getting along famously. It was everything I could have ever wished for. Our lives together quickly became this beautiful tapestry. Mark was my steadfast companion, always there for advice or a wild adventure. Sarah was my soulmate, my confidant, the one who understood me without words. We'd have these regular movie nights at our place, the three of us piled on the couch, laughing until our sides hurt. Or we'd go hiking, exploring new trails, Mark always leading the way, Sarah pointing out interesting plants or birds. Dinners were a constant rotation between our favorite spots, full of lively conversation and shared stories. It felt like we had found our perfect little ecosystem, a sanctuary where we could all just be ourselves, completely and utterly content. I remember looking at them sometimes, at the two people I loved most in the world, and feeling this overwhelming sense of gratitude. This was it, the life I'd always dreamed of. Happy, secure, full of love. The decision to propose to Sarah felt like the most natural thing in the world. We'd been together for a few years, and every day with her just reinforced that feeling. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. I meticulously planned it, wanting it to be perfect. Of course, I confided in Mark. He was the first one I told. He was genuinely thrilled for us, offering ideas, even helping me pick out the ring. He told me, "She's the one, man. You got a good one." His excitement made me even more certain. The day I proposed, it was magical. We were on a cliff overlooking the ocean at sunset, and when I got down on one knee, her eyes welled up with tears. She said yes, of course, and that moment, the pure joy on her face, the feeling of her arms around me, it was everything. I called Mark right after, practically shouting the news, and he was genuinely ecstatic, almost as excited as I was. It felt like a shared victory. Our wedding was everything we'd hoped for and more. Sarah was a vision, and Mark was my best man, standing proudly by my side. He delivered an incredible speech, full of hilarious anecdotes from our college days and heartfelt wishes for our future. He spoke about our bond, about Sarah's radiant spirit, and how perfect we were together. He even teared up a little, which surprised everyone, including me. It was a beautiful day, surrounded by all our loved ones, celebrating our love and our new life together. I remember looking out at the reception, seeing Sarah laughing with her friends, Mark chatting animatedly with my family, and feeling this profound sense of peace and overwhelming happiness. This was it. This was my forever, with my wife and my best friend standing with me. What more could a man ask for? Life after the wedding was exactly as wonderful as I'd imagined. Sarah and I settled into our routines, building our home, making plans for the future. Mark was still a constant presence, our third musketeer. He'd often come over for dinner, sometimes a few times a week, just hanging out, watching movies, playing board games. It never felt like an intrusion. It felt natural, like he was part of the fabric of our home. Sarah loved his company, too. They'd often spend hours discussing books or art, topics that, admittedly, I sometimes struggled to keep up with. I loved seeing them interact, their easy camaraderie, the way they'd finish each other's sentences. It made my heart swell to see the two people I cherished most in the world getting along so beautifully. Everything felt perfect, harmonious. I was living a dream. Looking back, the signs were subtle at first, almost imperceptible. Maybe it was just me, being overly sensitive. Little things, really. Sarah and Mark would sometimes have these inside jokes that I wasn't privy to, a quick glance exchange that seemed to hold a deeper meaning. Or they'd whisper something to each other and then stop abruptly when I walked into the room. I'd shrug it off, telling myself it was nothing, just friends being friends. But then there were the times they'd make plans without me, things they forgot to mention until later. A coffee catch-up, a quick trip to a new gallery. And when I'd ask about it, they'd both act a little too casual, a little too dismissive. A tiny flicker of unease, like a barely audible discord in a perfect melody. I pushed it down, of course. Why would I ever doubt them? The unease started to grow, a dull ache in the pit of my stomach. It wasn't anything concrete, just a feeling. A gut instinct screaming that something was off. Sarah started spending more time on her phone, often taking it with her to another room when it vibrated. Mark was often busy when I suggested we do something, but then I'd hear about him and Sarah having gone to that new restaurant or seen that movie I wanted to see. I try to talk myself out of it. You're being paranoid, I'd tell myself. They're just close friends. But the little things piled up. The way their hands brushed a little too long when handing something over. The way their laughter was a little too intimate when I wasn't looking. It was like a slowly tightening knot in my chest, a cold dread that I couldn't shake, even in the warmth of my own home. I started to confront them, gently at first. Hey, you two seem to be spending a lot of time together lately. I'd say, trying to sound lighthearted. They'd always have an explanation, a perfectly reasonable one. Oh, we were just brainstorming ideas for that charity event. Or, Mark was helping me fix my laptop. And I want to believe them. I really did. After all, this was Mark, my best friend, my brother. This was Sarah, my wife, the woman I loved more than anything. Why would they ever betray me? The explanations were always so plausible, so convincing, that I'd end up feeling guilty for even asking. Like I was the one creating a problem where there was none. But the seed of doubt, once planted, refused to die. It just burrowed deeper. Then came the outright lies. Not big, dramatic ones, but small, insidious ones. I'd ask Sarah where she'd been, and she'd say she was at the gym, but then later I'd see a receipt for a coffee shop near Mark's office. Or Mark would say he was working late, but then Sarah would accidentally mention a concert they'd gone to that same night. My heart would pound in my chest, a frantic drumbeat of betrayal. Each lie, no matter how small, felt like a brick being added to a wall between us. It wasn't just the act itself. It was the deception, the calculated effort to hide the truth. The trust, once so absolute, was starting to fray, unraveling thread by painful thread. My mind raced, trying to put the pieces together, but the picture that was forming was too horrifying to contemplate. The feeling morphed from a gnawing unease into a cold, terrifying fear. I started noticing things I'd been too blind or too trusting to see before. The way Sarah would look at Mark when she thought I wasn't watching, a softness in her eyes, a secret smile. The way Mark would subtly touch her arm, a fleeting gesture that seemed to say ours rather than friends. Every interaction between them, once a source of comfort, now felt like a punch to the gut. My mind was a whirlwind of questions, suspicions, and a desperate hope that I was wrong. I was terrified of what I might find, but even more terrified of living in this constant state of agonizing uncertainty. My home, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cage filled with silent accusations and unspoken truths. I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. The suspicion was consuming me, eroding my peace of mind, poisoning every moment. I had to know. I chose a quiet evening, when we were all together at home, for what I hoped would be a casual, innocent question. I started by bringing up an old memory, a funny story about the three of us from years ago. I watched their faces, hoping to see the usual warmth, the shared nostalgia. But there was a flicker of something else, a slight hesitation, a subtle shift in their eyes. Then, I dropped the bomb. "You two have been spending a lot of time together, haven't you?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. Their reactions were immediate. A sudden stillness, a quick glance exchanged between them, a desperate attempt to feign innocence. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, her voice a little too high. Mark just looked away, and in that moment, in their silence, in their awkwardness, I knew. The air in the room became thick with unspoken words, with the crushing weight of a truth I didn't want to hear. The denial was swift and absolute. "What are you talking about? Don't be ridiculous," Sarah exclaimed, her voice rising in indignation. Mark chimed in, equally vehement. "Dude, come on. She's your wife. I'm your best friend. What kind of messed up thoughts are you even having?" They both put on a convincing show, feigning hurt and outrage at my accusations. They tried to turn it around on me, making me feel crazy, paranoid, insecure. They accused me of not trusting them, of ruining our friendship, of doubting our marriage. And for a moment, just a fleeting moment, I almost believed them. Almost. Their anger felt so real, their denials so forceful. But deep down, the feeling of certainty, the cold dread, remained. Their performance was a little too perfect, a little too rehearsed. It only confirmed my worst fears. The confrontation, instead of bringing clarity, only made things worse. The atmosphere in the house became suffocating. The easy laughter, the comfortable silences, everything was gone, replaced by a tense, heavy quiet. Sarah avoided my gaze, spent more time in her study with the door closed. Mark stopped coming over as often, and when he did, the conversation was stilted, forced. It was like a fragile vase that had been dropped, and even though they tried to glue it back together, the cracks were painfully visible. The trust was shattered, and no amount of denial could put it back. Every casual touch, every shared glance, now felt loaded with unspoken meaning, with the weight of a secret they were desperately trying to keep. I was living in a nightmare, trapped in a house with two people who were once my whole world, now strangers hiding a devastating truth. My mind became a relentless loop of suspicion and dread. I started noticing everything, analyzing every word, every gesture. I'd replay conversations in my head, searching for clues, for moments I'd missed. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford, haunted by images of them together, by the imagined whispers of their betrayal. My work suffered, my appetite vanished. I was a shell of myself, consumed by the agonizing uncertainty. It was like living in a fog, where nothing felt real except the pain in my chest. I felt like I was drowning, pulled under by the crushing weight of their deception. The foundation of my life, built on love and trust, was crumbling around me, and I was powerless to stop it. The truth, when it finally revealed itself, was not a dramatic confession, but a quiet, devastating discovery. It was late at night. I couldn't sleep, as usual, and I went to get a glass of water. Sarah's phone was on the kitchen counter, screen down. A notification popped up, a text message. From Mark. My heart pounded, a frantic drum in my ears. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't stop myself. I picked it up. The message was short, simple, yet utterly devastating. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Miss you. X." That single X was like a knife twisting in my gut. It wasn't a friendly kiss, it was an intimate one. And then I opened their message thread. Page after page of hidden conversations, secret plans, affectionate words, confirming every single one of my worst fears. My legs gave out. The world spun. The betrayal hit me with a physical force, knocking the air out of my lungs. I stood there, phone in hand, the words blurring before my eyes, but the meaning searing itself into my soul. The silence in the house was deafening, yet it screamed their betrayal. My breath hitched. Tears welled up, blurring my vision, but I didn't care. The pain was so intense, so raw, it felt like my chest was being ripped open. It wasn't just the fact of their infidelity. It was the layers of deceit, the years of lies, the absolute demolition of everything I thought was real. My wife, my best friend. They had conspired against me, behind my back, in my own home. The trust one had placed in them, so completely and unconditionally, was not just broken, but utterly pulverized. My entire world, my perception of reality, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I didn't scream, I didn't shout. I simply walked into our bedroom. Sarah was asleep. I woke her gently. Her eyes fluttered open, sleepy and confused. "Look," I said, my voice hollow, devoid of any emotion, holding out her phone with Mark's message still on the screen. Her eyes widened. The sleep instantly vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic, then a dawning comprehension, then resignation. She tried to stammer out an explanation, a pathetic excuse, but the words died in her throat. She knew. I knew. And the truth, finally out in the open, was a toxic cloud, filling every corner of the room. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to deny. The silence that followed was heavy, choked with the weight of shattered vows and broken friendships. And then, the dam broke. Not with a torrent of tears or a desperate plea, but with a quiet, broken confession from Sarah. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It just happened." She tried to explain, tried to rationalize, to minimize, but her words were meaningless, lost in the roar of betrayal in my ears. She confessed to an affair that had started months ago, a slow, insidious erosion of our marriage. Mark, she admitted, was not just her accomplice, but her partner in this devastating deception. Every secret glance, every whispered conversation, every forgotten meeting, it all clicked into place, forming a horrifying mosaic of infidelity. The details were excruciating, each one a fresh stab to my heart. I called Mark. My hands were shaking so violently, I could barely hold the phone. When he answered, his voice was casual, unsuspecting. "Hey man, what's up?" And then I unleashed it, the raw, unfiltered pain and fury. I told him what I knew, every sordid detail. There was a long, horrifying silence on the other end, then a stammered, pathetic attempt at denial. "What? No, man, you've got it all wrong." But his voice cracked, his usual bravado completely gone. Then a choked sigh and a quiet "I'm so sorry." That was it. No grand explanation, no desperate plea for forgiveness. Just those two words, inadequate and utterly hollow. My best friend, the man I had shared my entire life with. He had betrayed me, not just with my wife, but with my trust, with our shared history, with everything we were. It was a double-edged sword, cutting me deeper than I ever thought possible. The days and weeks that followed were a blur of pain, anger, and profound sadness. Our home, once filled with laughter and love, became a mausoleum of broken dreams. Sarah moved out. Mark, predictably, vanished from my life. The friendships we shared, the social circles we moved in, they all became fractured, choosing sides or awkwardly avoiding me. The world felt smaller, colder, devoid of the vibrant colors it once held. I was left with the devastating silence, the echoing emptiness, and the constant, throbbing ache of betrayal. Every memory, once cherished, was now tainted, poisoned by the knowledge of what had truly been happening behind my back. The hardest part wasn't just the heartbreak, but the complete shattering of my sense of self. Who was I, if not the man who had a loving wife and a loyal best friend? My identity was so intertwined with them, with our perfect life, that when it imploded, I felt utterly lost. I had to learn to trust myself again, to trust my own judgment, to believe in my own worth. It was a slow, agonizing process of picking up the pieces, trying to understand how I could have been so blind, so naive. I started therapy, trying to make sense of the emotional wreckage. I reconnected with other friends I had neglected, finding solace in their unwavering support. It was a journey of rediscovery, a painful but necessary process of rebuilding myself from the ground up. People ask about forgiveness. And honestly, I don't know. Maybe someday. Maybe not. The wound is still too fresh, the scars too deep. Forgiveness feels like an abstract concept right now, a destination I can't even imagine reaching. The betrayal was too profound, the deceit too calculated. How do you forgive someone who systematically dismantled your entire world? How do you forgive the two people you trusted most for shattering your heart and your faith in humanity? Perhaps time will soften the edges. Perhaps understanding will eventually replace the anger. But for now, it's a raw, open wound, and the path to healing is long and uncertain. So here I am, no longer the man with the perfect life, the perfect wife, the perfect friend. I'm a man who has experienced the absolute worst kind of betrayal, who has had to confront the devastating reality that the people closest to him were living a lie. But I'm still here. I'm standing. I'm learning to breathe again. I'm focusing on myself, on my own healing, on building a future that is truly mine, free from the shadows of their deception. It's not easy. Some days, the pain is overwhelming. But every day, I choose to keep going. I choose to believe in the possibility of new beginnings, of new trust, of new happiness. Because while they took so much from me, they didn't take everything. They didn't take my spirit. They didn't take my capacity to love again someday. And that, my friend, is a victory in itself. What would you have done in my shoes, knowing everything that happened?